we're delighted tonight to have Danielle Barbereau. That's how I say it.
Pronounced. Well pronounced.
Thank you. It's because she's French. To share some, I've seen the presentation, some really, really interesting and empowering information for us to deal with around relationships, particularly going through midlife and menopause, because it can be such a challenging time. And there are so many reasons that those challenges can occur. And I know that Danielle's going to be discussing some of those with us. She's a coach. She's had over 10 years experience. She's worked with thousands of women, helping them come to terms with the relationships. She's also written a book, and there'll be an offer on the book as well, and it's called After the Split, and I'm sure she'll share information about that. So I'm going to hand it straight over to Danielle.
I'm going to try and upload a presentation. This is the moment. Yeah. Are you able to see that? I am absolutely delighted to be speaking tonight about something which is extremely dear to me, which is relationships and midlife. And I'll say a little bit more why it's so important to me. But for 10 years now, I have been a divorce coach, and I have helped people through difficult moments like divorce in their relationships. I see people are coming in, so I don't know whether we want... Anyway.
No, carry on.
I carry on as if nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And this is a topical subject. Actually, I was listening to Women's Hour, I think, yesterday, and they were mentioning midlives and the relationship. I think it was Dawn French who was speaking, who was not happy with the word middle age or the word midlife. But frankly, I can't think of anything else to use. And this is what I will use for this presentation. So let me see if I can go to the next slide. That should do it. So just to introduce myself, I am a divorce coach. I'll explain in a second what that is. And you've already spoken a little bit about how long I've been doing this. I'm very proud to have been a single mom for a long time, most of my life, after a very difficult divorce from a coercive and violent man. Little did I know that later on in my life, that would be actually something which informs my work. But I'm proud that I always work through afterwards and raise my girls, and who are both happy and successful. So I am proud of that. I started my business in my 50s and absolutely love what I do. I'm hoping that you understand why in a minute. And also on a personal level, although I got divorced in my 30s, I then met a really lovely man. I think we were both 57, and got married when we were both 60. So sometimes, you know, my clients think that if they get divorced into their 40s or 50s, it's the end of life. Oh, no, 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 no. It's just a new chapter. And it's amazing how we can start all over again and reinvent a different future. I'm a great believer of that. So what I do in my work is about providing emotional support to clients who are struggling, especially, for example, if they have been left unexpectedly by their partner after, let's say, 30, 40 years of marriage. Often that coincides with the menopause, and this is a really, really difficult time. So I help them recover as quickly as possible. I'll explain a bit more how. I also often am asked to help somebody decide whether to stay in the relationship or leave it. And not surprisingly, people are asking themselves, should they stay, should they go? There's so much at stake, especially after decades of marriage. When you invest so much in a relationship, it's difficult to leave it for many reasons, not the least that you may be taking a lot of blame for that. Incidentally, my work is not counseling, which is much slower and less, more general, let's say, whereas I am exclusively working with divorce relationship, very focused, very intense, and it's very rare, for example, that I see a client more than 5 times, even if they are at the depth of despair. And what I want is that my clients are able to gain enough control, enough confidence to participate actively in the divorce and to give clear instructions to the lawyers. Incidentally, most of my clients are referred to me by family lawyers, barristers, and judges. I've been doing nothing else for the past 10 years, and I absolutely love it. I also wrote a book. I'll say more about that in a second. So typically, my clients are women, although I do work with men too, but overwhelmingly women in their mid-years. And there's a reason for that. Most of them have been married or in a relationship for a very long time, have children, grandchildren, and dream of a happy moment when everybody has flown the nest and they are going to rekindle something very special with their husband. And at that moment, when it's all like this, no money worries, the husband comes home and says, or texts in some instances, or leaves cryptic messages, like my book, apparently a client had my book left on her pillow, and that was supposed to mean, I'm leaving you. After 40 years of marriage, I thought that was taking the biscuit, frankly. So you can imagine the devastation that this causes for women who did not expect that, especially when it is quite clear, even if it's not admitted to, that there is somebody else, and often a younger woman. This is very difficult at a time when women have all the symptoms of the menopause and feel old, let's face it. Or it is a time when a lot of women are thinking, okay, I've been a reasonably good wife, I've raised my children, they are now flying, it's my time, and should I leave? And it's quite an interesting moment, and I actually believe that for a lot of women, the menopause is a moment of complete liberation. In fact, I had a client this morning who was using all sorts of metaphor. She felt she was flying, she was free, she was this and she was that. And I thought, my goodness, I wish I could record her for tonight's presentation. But obviously I'm not allowed, but I thought it was interesting. When I think of my clients, what is overwhelming is that they have no idea of what is happening. Whether they decided to leave they instigated a divorce or a separation, or even more so, when they are at the receiving end of it. They just do not know what to do. Everything is different. The world as they knew it has changed, and they don't know how to deal with that. No one knows how to deal with a divorce. We are raised with fairy tales of we meet the person and then we go off in the sunset, ever happy ever after. Yes, except that's not always the case. And sometimes some people must leave, especially when they are in a coercive relationship. I'll say a little bit more in a few slides about what it is, a coercive relationship, simply because I was alarmed and horrified to see that on the run-up to Christmas, I would say between September and December 2020, I seemed to work exclusively with women who were in coercive relationships. And I was really horrified. Why? Because when they are in one, they don't recognize what it is. And this is where I want to give a couple of explanations. And my work is to help clients get clarity, but also help them make difficult decisions, because they are almost paralyzed. They're like a rabbit in headlights, all this kind of thing. So that's what I do. Interestingly, whereas the divorce rate is going down for all groups of population, it used to be quite high, it's going down for every age group except the over 50s. The statistic I'm showing here is actually a research done in America, but it is exactly the same in the UK. And the divorce for the over 50s has doubled in the past 20 years, and even more so for the over 65. I have a few clients in their 70s. Imagine what it's like at that point to think, I have to start all over again. And the reasons I've listed them, they are not going to surprise you. Infidelity, for example, or children leaving the nest. Often the children were the glue, the only topic of conversation. Retirement also, because it's a huge change of life. And often during retirement, people are thinking, well, what is my purpose now? Grass greener, quite a negative way of going, or wanting something else, thinking, my days now are limited, or it could be 20, 30, 40 years still, but we want to make them count. People live longer, healthier, and it is also the case that second or even third marriages tend to be a little bit more fragile. So for all these reasons, but mainly because we think, is there something else? I deserve to be happy. People are ending lackluster marriages. Nevertheless, I make it sound almost casual, and it's not casual. The emotional effects of breakups are huge, ranging from confusion, and that is also a menopausal symptoms, to struggling with not knowing what to do. People go to see a lawyer, but what else should be happening? What is hard for my client is when they don't know why the marriage ended. And the great majority don't know why. They are never given an explanation. And to me, after a long time, you should deserve the respect of an explanation, but actually most time you get either platitude or you're told it's your fault, when actually that's not the way. And when this is the case, you feel cheated because you've not been able to work at the marriage. So it raises a huge sense of unfairness and also damaging emotion, especially when there is a younger party or another party. And if these damaging emotions are not worked through, it's very difficult not only to move on, but to get out of bitterness, which frankly is no way of living our mature years. Unsurprisingly, everybody loses confidence and self-esteem. I mean, this is on the floor, not surprisingly, and even that feeling of, well, am I past it now? And on top of that, we had the symptoms of the menopause, where indeed we maybe not struggle, but at least we ask ourselves questions about aging, especially for partners gone off with somebody who is younger. But even the menopause itself, it's the end of fertility. And for a lot of women, they are reassessing their purpose in life and their identity, which is often linked to being a mother, or, and suddenly this is the end of that, at least the fertility ends. Children not only leaving the nest, but starting their own families. Sometimes adult children siding with their father, saying, you're menopausal, subtext, you're insane, all this kind of thing to demean and belittle women. And also, when I was listening I only got the end of that thing about women's hour, but they were speaking about invisibility. And it is the case that the menopausal woman often feels that she's become invisible, as if visibility was linked to fertility, which I find very strange indeed. But all this is happening. Also, sometimes they may have, especially if their own children have got divorced, difficulty seeing their grandchildren. So there's all that feeling of unease, also sometimes extremely debilitating symptoms, so much so that women at that time can become, yes, feeling invisible, irrelevant. And I want women who are in the menopause and after to feel relevant, old, and certainly feel that they have lost the sense of who they are. When I say to a client, in her 50s, I'm not getting a sense of who you are. What does Jane like? They are incapable of telling me. They no longer know who they are. They were somebody's wife, somebody's mother, and it's very difficult for them to know who they are anymore. They can't even remember what they used to like doing. I hope you're not perturbed by all these little pings. At least I hear a lot of them. I think it's people coming in. We soldier on. So I mentioned before coercive control because I was horrified by the number of my clients who were in coercive relationships. And the problem is when somebody is genuinely in a coercive relationship, or some people speak about narcissism, the person who is the victim of that doesn't know what it is and think that there's something seriously wrong with them. Being in a coercive relationship means that you no longer really know what's wrong with the relationship or with anything. You actually think that you have problems in your marriage because you're a bad person and a bad wife. That is because for years, an abusive partner has fed this drip information. You're stupid, you're this, you're that, pea brain, ugly, greedy, stupid. That was what I'd heard in one day from clients of mine. So obviously when you hear that, and when you're often undermined and criticized in front of others, including the children, no wonder you start feeling you no longer trust your judgment. And that is the problem. The abuser also changes goalposts. For example, would happily say, I want my dinner on the table at 6 p.m. Yes, men can still say that, apparently. And when the dinner is served at 6 p.m. the following night, it's, why are you serving it so early? I'm not ready. So you start, the goalpost changes all the time. There's manipulation, so much so that the person feels that or doesn't realize that they're starting to lose their mind. And one sign which really helps to recognize that abuser is that they always turn themselves into the victim. You made me do that. One of my clients was told by her husband, of course I have to treat you as if you were in a psychiatric hospital, because that's what it is. That's how you are, you're mad. So when you hear that for years and years, imagine the effect this has, especially as you have been isolated from your friends and family. Why? Because that is potential support. That is somebody who could say, no, that's not right. And actually, the abuser has a huge, strong hold on lives. For example, I had a client who said, I'm not allowed to wear green. So I said, oh, why is that? My husband doesn't want me to wear green. So I said, okay, your homework, you're going to go and buy something green. I wanted her to regain something, do something different. But the problem is, my clients were victims of this kind of abuse, and it is frequent, believe me, nothing to do with being in a working class family or not, it doesn't matter. But what is common, what they all have in common is that no one believes that the person who loves them, supposedly, would purposefully try to hurt them. And that's the problem. And if I get them to understand that, yes, it's not normal to be told what to wear in the morning, that's common as well. If I say that, look, that's not right, they say, oh, but you don't understand. I'm a bad wife. I'm a bad woman. So I said, oh, explain that to me. What does that mean? So I like this definition, which I found in Psych Central. It's actually an online journal. And it said coercive control is a persistent pattern of undermining behavior by the abuser. And that's exactly what it is. It is certainly not caused by a toxic relationship, certainly not caused by a bad wife, and certainly never ever about love or concern. I always criticize your parents because I feel they are not good enough for you. It's never that. And I'm the only one who loves you properly. No, when you hear that, that's seriously wrong. It is all about power and control. And this comes from deeply held belief systems, which the abuser thinks gives them the right to criticize. For example, if they have been raised in a very religious family and their partner is not religious, they feel they have the right to impose their view on a person. I was giving that presentation to a group of lawyers and psychologists very recently, and the psychologist in the room who was a consultant said to me, these beliefs are actually formed by the time a child is 18 months old. And I was horrified by that, to be honest. So it's nothing to do with what the partner supposedly made them do. They will say, it's your fault, you made me shout. Really? And what is important is that as a wife, you can never, ever repair the abuser. Not even with pouring love on them, it's not going to happen. The only thing you can do is leave. This is the only time, when I really feel there's no question, one has to leave this kind of relationship. So I've said a lot of that, but for example, one thing which strikes me is that these men are incapable of being empathetic. I had a client who came back from hospital 2 weeks ago, and when she walked home, she'd been in for an operation, in for about 5 days. When she walked home, her husband said, well, okay, make me a cup of tea. This is the end of your holiday. Well, that was not a holiday. She was in the hospital for an operation. So that's quite interesting. And I don't want to spend too long speaking about that, but only would say that it's incredible how successful these, in fact, incompetent people have, how efficient they are in brainwashing their victim. So I wrote that book. It was 6 years ago. It was not about coercive control. It was about recovering from a breakup. And this is some feedback that I got, but actually, Claire, you did mention it before. I've put the book half price on my website for 10 days if you are interested in it. And I think my last slide contained my website again. But what was important to me was to show empathy for client, but also strategy. And I am gratified by the kind of feedback I am getting from readers and also from lawyers who are buying the book for their own clients. So what does the book do? And this is how I work. The most important thing when a client is coming to see me is that I need to help them survive the immediate aftermath. It's incredible our client described what I said, how does it feel to be left by someone? And they will use words like it's a tsunami, I've fallen down a dark hole, I keep falling, and it's very vivid pictures. And as I said at the beginning, they do not know what to do. And it's important that they should know what to do. One way is to try to understand what has been happening at a time when nothing makes sense in their life. I give them strategies to survive short, medium, and even long term. And very importantly, I want to help them work through damaging emotions. That started because I remember I had a client a long time ago who had been married for 40 years and who could not let go. And she was following her husband everywhere. She ended up having, an order against her because she was really, but that's because she was still jealous, still bitter 10 years later. I want people to be able to be active in their own divorce and also most certainly move forward in a positive way. And this is what gives sense to what I do, I think. And it's possible. I am certainly the proof of that. One of my clients who read my book and I've been working with one day said to me, I said, how are you? And she said, I feel I am a kintsugi pottery. And I didn't know what it was. I said, what is it? And then later on, I looked it up. And this is it. Kintsugi pottery, also known as the golden repair. Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by reconstructing it with gold. Instead of throwing away the broken item, they display and honor it, and the repairs are seen as part of the history of the object, which should be honored. Furthermore, by being repaired with gold, the broken item becomes more beautiful than it was before. Wow, what a metaphor, what an image. This woman who had been broken, I remember she was very religious. In fact, she was a minister in the church. And she said, Danielle, she was in a very abusive relationship. And she said, I can't divorce. I'm a minister. I've made vows in front of God. And I said, yes, but... And eventually something happened. Anyway, she did start the divorce proceedings, but and very quickly, she compared herself with this. And this morning, yes, this client who was saying, oh, free and happy she is, that is it. This is what we can do. We are broken when these breakups happen and other things in our life, which can be very difficult. All the sadness, all the breakage can be put together again, stuck with gold, and we become a better person for it. Well, that absolutely blew my mind. And I show you in my next book, Kintsugi will appear. I love it so much. And interestingly, it is actually mostly women who instigate the divorce after the age of 50. That took me by surprise. Sometimes it's, of course, because they have been cornered into making a decision, or they had very little choice, like they were in a coercive relationship. But often it is because they choose to, and they think, this is my time. And he's boring, he's this, he's that, I'm out. And that's an interesting thing because they wouldn't have done that in their 30s or 40s. Whereas men, of course, they are capable of moving with a younger woman, even to have a child. Sometimes my client said, oh, he's had a child. And I think, really? He's 55 and he's had a child. Oh, well, at 55, I would not have wanted to be responsible for an infant, a toddler, a teenager. No, thank you very much indeed. And very quickly, women understand that actually their choice or their position is so much better. And of course, the menopause I described before, the negative aspect of it, but it is also a wonderful time. It's a pivotal time. It's a moment. I mean, they called it the change in the past. I don't know if they still do, but it is that. Suddenly, opportunities open, and many clients describe ending their marriage at that point or their relationship as incredibly liberating because they want every moment to count. They feel, I deserve to be happy, and they're prepared to make a fresh start. Or incredible or brave. What a sign of hope and affirmation for the future. They also have their own money, their own pension. Our mothers didn't so much, and they are not prepared to settle for less. I believe women who are menopausal, postmenopausal are at their peak. And what I want, really the message, and what I want to be as a postmenopausal woman, I forgot to say I'm 63. I became menopausal about 9 years ago. It's all done and dusted. But what I want to be always and forevermore is relevant. And that is important to me, relevance. Women feel so empowered that they are even going to remarry. And I'm a good example. As I say, I got remarried age 60. And interestingly, this idea of remarriage was raised in the Platinum magazine. I don't know if you've discovered Platinum. I like it because it is exactly for women of our age. So it was an article in April 2021, and they quoted statistics by the ONS, which said, of course, the rate of divorce for the over 50s is increasing dramatically, but so is the rate of remarriage for the over 50s. And I find that's an incredibly positive message. Of course, there's a psychologist who said we live in hope that our second marriage will be better than the first one. Well, yes, we do. Yeah, I hope that's the case. But the word hope is what matters there, that we believe it's worth that we can try. And interestingly, 60% of divorced people aged 55 and older have remarried. Now, this is huge. And yes, I think it's an incredibly positive message. In Good Housekeeping magazine this month, there was an interview with Brenda Bethlen, who is an actress I really like. I think she's in her late 70s, maybe even early 80s, I've forgotten. She had been with her partner for 35 years when they decided to get married. So that's another form of hope. And I love the sentence she said. She said, when we tied the knot, it felt completely different. It has given everything added warmth, knowing that we are one, a sense of belonging. How beautiful is that? And it really confirms my opinion that it's never too late for anything. We can always start a new chapter. And we do that probably by focusing on what is good in our life and many other things. I also looked at, I was thinking, obviously I work with people who are getting divorced, people who are breaking up. And I thought, so from that, I can deduce certain things. For example, I know that what will destroy a marriage more than anything is not infidelity, is lack of communication. That's certain. And also the feeling of being taken for granted. These are killers. But I looked at the internet and found something, an article from Bonology, never heard of them. And it confirmed what I think, communication, support, trust, no relationship without respect and trust, being friends, respect, compromise, time apart, time together, forgiveness, keeping the spark, including intimacy, persistence, commitment, showing appreciation, looking at positive and shared values. So some are Bonology, some are what I conclude from working with my clients. But I think it is a useful reminder because a lot of us actually, even if we're not thinking of getting divorced or whatever, a lot of us are thinking, yes, that's it. This is the time to find what we had with this husband of ours and becoming happy again. And this is useful to remember what ingredients are part of that. That is my last slide, sorry. I like this book. It's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I find this book fascinating. It's been written by somebody called Bronnie Ware, who is an Australian nurse working in palliative care. So by definition, her patients are at the end of their life And for the past 15 years or so, when they were in a hospice, she has been saying to them, do you have any regrets in your life? And these are the top 5 regrets of the dying. There's 5 chapters in the book. This is it. The first one absolutely blew my mind. I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life expected of me. How many times do we do something because it's expected of goodness knows whom, and not because we really, really want to do it? Well, I believe that at this time in our life, we've earned, oh boy, we've earned to do what we really want to do. Next one will not surprise you. I wish I'd not worked so hard. Nobody's thinking, I wish I'd had one more promotion. No, because at the end of the life, what matters is not money, status is what is here. In the core values, and money, status rarely are core values, whereas family, love, relationships, travel, I don't know, kindness are values which people adhere to. Expressing feeling is very important too. As I say, I believe that what breaks relationship is lack of recognition, and that sometimes somebody saying, you may think I'm taking you for granted, but I don't, and thank you, that would go a very long way. Friends are gold. You know how you feel when you've seen, especially friends we've had forever, but you know how you feel when you've had a coffee. Hopefully soon we'll be able to do that again with a friend and had a good giggle. And I'm a great believer that if something makes us happy, now we deserve to do more of it. And also, if something does not make us happy, less of it. It's not a bad recipe for happiness. And the last one is quite interesting. I wish I'd let myself be happy. It's about risk-taking, isn't it? It's about daring to do something different, to take the plunge. And sometimes just about to do it. And at the last minute, you think, oh, I couldn't possibly. Well, observe yourself when you do that. We regret things we have not done, not the mistakes we've made. So there's an expression in English, and truly I don't think we have the equivalent in French, so there. That expression that I detest in English is better the devil you know. Really, forget this. Forget this. And I think at this stage in our life, we can take the plunge. And goodness knows, if we are open-minded enough, where that will go. We are programmed to be comfortable with what is familiar. This is why sometimes we say stay in relationships which are not good enough. But imagine what could possibly happen if we opened ourselves to possibilities. And that concludes my talk. So I'm going to try and get out of the presentation. I assure you I am not. Oh, am I back? Am I back?
You are.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud of myself. That was the hard bit.
The technology is what always gets us. Danielle, that was really fascinating. I had to ask though, because you said you'd come out of, and if anybody has any questions, please just unmute yourself if you'd like to be.
And I can see the stuff on chat, which we will have to catch up. I will look at it in a sec.
Yeah, but if anybody has any questions, please just unmute yourself and ask them. We are recording this just to let you know it will go out on YouTube as well. But yeah, you said your husband was very violent and aggressive, your first husband. How did you build yourself up after that to go on and find love again? Because a lot of women, after they've been in such an experience, and it could be with friends or anybody, feel a little of themselves die. How did you build yourself back up to be able to find love again?
Certainly time, but I never really lost my sense of self at the time. I was a mother, I was working full time, that helped me to keep sane and to preserve a sense of identity. But more importantly, I think I didn't want to give him the power over me anymore. And I thought, I am going to repair myself. Absolutely. I agree with you. Some women find that very difficult. And I was worried in a way because I kept having to be strong all the time. And I was concerned that my soft bit, my vulnerable bit, was it still alive? And I had to work at that, especially to meet somebody. Suddenly you have to be vulnerable again. And I was worried I'd lost that, but I hadn't. I was very conscious that I wanted to preserve that, definitely.
We have a question as well. So, yes, sorry, I just get my glasses on. Have you ever encountered the female in the relationship feeling like the victim, but underneath it, they are truly the persecutor in the relationship? Great question. That is such a good question.
Yes, the coercive behavior is perpetrated both by men and women. And some women are perfectly capable of that. And this is why I do have men clients as well, who are even in physically violent relationships, but certainly it's both. It's not about men or women in a way, it's about people. Some people do that. And thank goodness, many people don't. So I don't know, I did not hear the question, I'm very sorry. So I don't know if I've answered it. Have I?
Has a woman ever made out that she was the victim when actually she was the perpetrator?
Ah, very good question. And yes, indeed. And yes, indeed. And the reason I looked at behavior is because I was taken in, because for a while, because the strength, the forte of coercive people is that they are often very charming people, and they manage to persuade many people of that, including lawyers and judges. And that's the problem. Until you know what to look for, which now I do. And actually, I present regularly to lawyers about identifying signs. I've not gone into details at all here, but I go in much more details in presentations to lawyers, so they recognize it. They recognize that they can be taken in. And I do remember that woman taking me in until I thought, hang on a minute, that doesn't add up. But it's very subtle, they're very good at it, until you challenge them, and then they lose it completely. And they are capable of shouting at them, at me, at their lawyer, at the judge. Not a very good idea, by the way. They are incapable of controlling themselves, but you have to touch the nerve. And this is where you have to recognize subtle things sometimes. But for me, one of them is often that they turn themselves into the victim. And if a client says to me, my husband is a narcissist, I'm thinking, okay, often they've read about that. The person who is really in a relationship which makes no sense literally do not recognize it. So often that's a pointer, but I need more to be sure. So that was a very good question. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I didn't understand it.
No, it was, because when you were talking about the coercive control, I was thinking how this isn't just, relationships as in love life. It's also a lot of friendships can be about control too. Yeah,
colleagues. In fact, when I present like that to lawyers, which I do a lot, often lawyers will say, well, I was at the receiving end of that from another lawyer. So everybody, nobody is immune. I think we've all experienced what that is like. And it's very difficult to disentangle ourselves from this. So imagine how difficult it is when we are married to the person and have been for decades. It's extremely difficult. So that was an excellent question. And I'm looking also at the chat now, and I can see the comments that you too, just as do I, like the Coercive pottery. Isn't that wonderful? We are Coercive potteries. We can show that. We are more beautiful than we were before we had to put ourselves together again for any reason. And bereavement does the same. Of course it does.
Yeah, when I was listening to you there about the emotions around the breaking up, I've actually written down grief and bereavement, because I could relate so much to that, and I can only imagine when you were talking about the depths of despair and the black hole and things, how similar those two things are.
Absolutely correct. And in fact, I consider that divorce is like a bereavement, although there are differences, but the initial feelings are the same. And and I am trained actually in grief recovery. I am extremely interested in this for many reasons, but I am trained in it. But one thing, for example, that comes after bereavement is that you feel you've not been able to repair certain things. So it's the same, and you've not been able to say certain things to the person who's gone. And it's that feeling of being cheated of that possibility, which is so hard to recover from. So I agree with you, Claire. I think they are the very similar emotions. Also, when my clients are abandoned, as they see it, by their husband, they often say to me, I think it's worse than if he had died. And at that moment, I agree with them. Why? Because a widow initially will get sympathy, or a widower even more, people knocking at the door, even bringing food, or, and also the person who is bereaved doesn't have to suffer the humiliation of being left. So for that reason, in a way it's worse, but actually it isn't. And in the long run, losing someone who is dear to us, a child, a grandchild, like I have not so long ago, in fact, nearly 3 years ago to the date. And I know, Claire, you know what I'm also talking about. A lot of us know this deep, deep grief. It's not the same as a divorce, because we recover from a divorce. We recover from a broken relationship and we reinvent ourselves. Whereas bereavement is different. We learn to live and behave in a certain way, but it's always there in our heart. I don't want my client who are getting divorced to carry the former person in their heart. One question I ask very quickly is, would you take him back? And the answer to that is no. And if they say yes, I have to work on this. If somebody who leaves you is not worth taking them back, believe me.
We have another question. Do you work with widows as well,
Yes.
like with the people who've lost their partners?
It's exactly the question that Claire had asked. It's all the comment. It's about the same emotions, and there are techniques. The main technique is actually for the person to feel heard and feel that somebody is really hearing their story properly, and that is strangely comforting. But there's things which need to happen as well. Yes, indeed I do.
There was one, you said second marriages don't tend to last as long. Why not?
Well, it's the statistics which seems to bear that second marriages are fragile. Why not? Sometimes I really I'm going to hazard a guess more than make an informed answer there, but sometimes people are so lonely when their marriage breaks up that they are going to maybe jump quickly into something else without having worked through. And I want my clients to work through the breakup, the pain, the grief, the damaging emotions. And if this is not done properly, people are fragile. The reason I wrote the book is that that was 6 years ago. My clients were telling me they got, their husband had left them, so they joined a dating website. I said, "What are you doing?" But I realized that all the books on the market were about dating again, which is the last thing people should be doing until they've worked through all this stuff, which has to be then left behind. So in the aftermath, oh no, they're not ready. I actually believe that in those websites, there are loads of people who shouldn't be there because they actually are going to damage other people along the way. And unfortunately, if people get married on the rebound, they are likely to hurt others and it's likely to break. Or, they may repeat the same mistakes. I'm not a specialist of that, by the way. I'm just hazarding guessings there. But I know are lonely, are awful, are devastated, and the sense of loss of identity which comes from a breakup. Especially, some women who feel everybody's going to speak about them as if it mattered, but somehow they are more comfortable in a couple.
I only ask because I do know a few people who had second marriages and they seem to be over in the blink of an eye. Yeah. They were suddenly getting married again and then just as suddenly getting divorced again. And then finding real proper happiness with somebody else after that.
Exactly right. And again, isn't that a wonderful message of hope? So even if there's 2 failures, because people think of a breakup as a failure, well, to me, I think of it as the end of something. But even if that has happened, as long as they learn something out of it and work through it, absolutely, I believe, absolutely, they will make strong relationships.
And last question, because we are coming up to the end. How did you meet your second husband?
Oh,
I love romantic stories.
Very romantic. Like, I went on the internet and I never thought I'd do that. I never, ever thought. And it was actually a friend who encouraged me to do that. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to try for a month because she kept pestering me about it. And I thought, right, I'm going to try to have a good, I'm going to try to go for a coffee with somebody and have an interesting conversation. So I had absolutely no, illusion or anything. I just thought, I'll have a coffee, I'll have an interesting conversation. And actually, after coffee number 4, I said to my friend, no, that's it, I'm giving up, because he was much fatter, much uglier than he was on the photo. And I was embarrassed to be seen having a coffee with him. What does he say? I'm not going to my 5th coffee. And she said, Danielle, you are going to your 5th coffee, which was the following day. And I thought, why am I doing this? And here walked this man, and I thought, oh. And I always only put 2 hours in the park meter, but I always said to the people, I only have 1 hour in my park meter. But this time I used the 2 hours and I was thinking, I'd like to see him again. And that's all I did. I'd like to see him again. And then he said, would you see me again? And I said, yes. And at the end of that, I thought, I'd like to see him again. And we had actually, yes, a romantic courtship, which lasted over 3 months, just meeting for coffee, walks, lunches, getting to know each other. And I found him very interesting, very funny, not cracking jokes, witty and intelligent. And for me, this is a wonderful triangle.
Is he French too, we've been asked?
No, he's a gorgeous Yorkshireman. Of course, what a stupid question. No Frenchman for me.
I love it. I love the hope. You are ready to give up on number 4 and number 5 was the man for you. I think it's a message to everybody. Never give up hope.
Never give up hope.
Always there.
We reinvent ourselves. There is still life. While we can, we must live it to the full. Absolutely my belief. It's a huge privilege to age. So we are not going to complain about it.
I don't think we could end on anything better than that. That was fantastic, Danielle. Thank you so much. I found it so interesting, and I'm definitely going to have to nab you for my website, 50 Cents, to talk about this a bit more. Certainly, I'd love to. Thank you to everybody who joined us.
Thank you. Thank you for all these questions. It's wonderful for me to get feedback from you. So thank you for this.
It's wonderful. Claire, I can't remember who we have next month.
Gosh, yes. Next month. So next month we have sex, sex and more sex.
Claire, I've been missing all this.
Oh, you join us, Danielle. So it's Dr. Claire Macaulay. She's an oncologist, and she's reinventing herself, or has reinvented herself, as really supporting women going through the menopause years, because we all know, don't we, that libido and can plummet, that vaginal dryness is a problem that makes sex painful. And of course, that impacts so much, doesn't it, Danielle, on relationships?
It does.
So much. So it's I think it's a wonderful follow-on from you this month.
I'll be listening, definitely be attending.
And I see her talk to a lot on Twitter, and she's a strong woman, so it's going to be really interesting. And then the following months, as we now coming out of lockdown and going much more into, you know, hopefully some sort of normality, is we're having a fabulous lady called Tracy Tate to come and talk to us about menopause in the workplace, and how, if you're struggling in the workplace, how you can open up those communication lines to be able to get the best from your line managers to enable you to work so much more, I'm not going to say efficiently, because that does come into it when you're fatigued and you know, the brain fog and the anxiety kick in, but also so much more confidently, because now we're working so many years beyond the menopause years, and we want to be able to make the most of that. So yeah, we've got two great ones lined up for the next couple of months, and there will be more to come.
Definitely, yes. So that's it. Just to again say thank you to Danielle. Thank you to joining us. Danielle, if you just hang around a little bit, and we'll say goodbye to everybody else.
Yeah,
bye everyone.
Bye. Hope to see you again.
Yes.
Bye.
Adieu.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.